Hello everybody, welcome. We are doing a cool little demonstration here. Look at the table we got set up. We got this tent, we got some natural homemade bug spray I made, right? Because we got different bugs around here being in the wilderness, you know, surrounded by all this nature. Meanwhile, there's all this development going on around this entire place, which is pretty crazy. It's happening very rapidly. But without further ado, we have here C.C. Brown. You might have seen some of his articles written for the Liberator 2 News. And he has to share with us a design that he also made for Bigfoot Food Forest. And you can see, look at all this detail. He's got it printed out for us so we can really look at it. And Carlos.
This is the original right
yeah,
here.
take it away.
Well, hello everybody. And I just, in the intro, I do have a book, a published book, and it's available if you all have cash. I'd be happy to sign it for you. Also, Corey's book is here, which is excellent. It's
so this
Natural
book is
Intelligence.
Yeah, this is what inspired me for our project. For those of you who don't know and anybody watching, right? This is Jim Gale's place in St. Cloud, 50 acres, where he's demonstrating a lot of the solutions we'll be demonstrating here. And that's Carlos's book. So be sure to check it out. I'll have it in the description as well.
And guess what? Look, in the back cover of Corey's book, anybody identify this?
Sacred geometry.
Sacred
Flower of life, I think.
The flower of life. Anybody kind of identify some similarities here with this? It's the seed of life over here, which is derived from the flower of life. But my point being that I've used sacred geometry for my design, and Corey is also finds sacred geometry very important.
Yeah.
So much so that he would include it in his back. So I currently I'm a music therapist, but I've also been a permaculturist for many years. I got my PDC in 2012 in New York City, and I've been part of many community gardens, especially in the Lower East Side, the East Village, part of Green Thumb. At some point, I was part of 3 community gardens there in the Lower East Side and East Village. I've also been part of a community garden in New Mexico, and currently I am manager of a garden in Bradenton. It's called the Neal Garden. So I kind of thought that maybe I'd introduce the term permaculture and walk you through just a couple of initial points about permaculture. Have you heard that term before?
I've read some books.
Yeah,
You read some
I think
books?
Steve is. You've read the Natural Intelligence, so you know about it.
All right, so maybe this is for our general audience then, as well as you guys. And I'd like to start with Manusobo Fukuoka, which is the author of the One Straw Revolution. And he says that permaculture is a philosophy that promotes, supports, and works with nature rather than against nature. He also states that in permaculture we have prolonged, protracted, and very thoughtful observation before we implement and take action, rather than thoughtless labor. That's really important. So how does one work with nature? Well, in permaculture, we're interested in designing landscapes that mimic or replicate the natural environment, the natural processes. And that is called biomimicry. It's actually a science. And biomimicry means mimicking biology. And you would say, well, so why would I mimic biology? You know, human intelligence or artificial intelligence, which is a derivation of that, is superior. For the sake of argument, let's say it's superior. And the answer is no. The best designer, the quintessential designer, up to a perfection almost, which is somewhat eerie when you really look into it, into the complexity that takes to design biology. Biology is the master designer, and above biology, the cosmos and all the forces that are working in the environment. But that larger network of forces, let's call it, is the master designer. And that's what we want to kind of follow or replicate. So my opinion, biology is the best chemist lab anywhere in this universe. So the term permaculture comes from a contraption that was coined up by Bill Mollison back in the 70s, and it's just that permaculture is permanent agriculture. Or perennial agriculture, permanent agriculture. So we're interested in perennial systems. So I'd like to ask you all, what might be the difference between, let's say, big agro, or the agricultural apparatus, and permaculture? Which one do you think works with nature, and which one does big agro work with or against nature?
Against.
That's an easy one, huh?
Chemicals.
Obviously against.
Yeah.
Right, and so chemicals, let's start with chemicals. Big agro and traditional, I guess the last 100 years or so, agriculture is heavy on the petrochemicals. And what do they use petrochemicals for? To fertilize the ground. Why do you need to fertilize the ground? Perhaps because you've depleted the ground so much so and robbed it of its nutrients that now you have to compensate. Well, guess what happens? That's a vicious circle, because once you start on that carousel, you can't stop. The ground continues to deteriorate with every spray you do of petrochemicals. And that is one of the crises that we have worldwide, is not only topsoil depletion, but nutrient depletion. And you've all heard that, foods, that we have to supplement with so many things nowadays because our food isn't as it used to be, because we didn't have supplements 150 years ago. We ate the food, right? The food was rich with all the nutrients that we needed. Where does the plants get the nutrients from? Is the soil, the ground. So big agro works against nature and sells us this idea of the green revolution and the high yields per acre. And there was this big thing in the 70s and 80s about that. And they ravished Southeast Asia, for example, with this idea. And it turns out that Fukuoka actually printed or did a paper where in his farm in Japan he would outcompete the big agro farms that were growing rye and rice and wheat. And what was his method was called natural farming. So he actually helped the soil recover, and he nourished the soil with different techniques that you might have some experience with today, rather than supplement the soil with all these toxic chemicals. And we're not going to go very much into this, but there's another aspect to that too, because that's also the fertilizers. How about the pesticides? What do you think the pesticides do?
Repel bugs. Kill bugs. Not just repel, but
they
kill.
poison the food, of course, and that poisons us. But they also wipe out entire bug populations. And in permaculture, and again, I go to Fukuoka, he demonstrated that there was certain spiders that ate the big caterpillars, the grasshoppers that eat some of the rice he demonstrated that without the introduction of pesticides, the natural environment provided the beneficial and the not beneficial insects, and they took care of themselves in a balance. And that's how nature operates. It gives you beneficial and then not so beneficial, but they complement each other, and one predates over the other one, and it works out in the end. So the idea of going into a field with herbicides not only poisons the food, but also destroys the ecological bug population and interaction. So that's just two examples of big agro working against nature and not being successful at it, in my opinion.
The way to say it simply is that we get calories without nutrition.
True. And if you go to the Midwest here over the last 30 or 40 years, the topsoil of the Midwest has shrunk, like 80%. Something drops, it's tremendous, because the third item, and I won't go into it too very far, is the plowing and the disturbing the soil, a part of big agro and traditional agriculture. In permaculture, we don't plow. There's another chair over here. You don't plow, and Fukuoka again was a big proponent of the no plow technique, because what happens when you plow, you turn the soil over, and when you do that, you interfere with the microbiota, all the microorganisms in the soil. You turn the soil over, and it becomes vulnerable to environmental stressors like wind and rain, and consequently, and this is done at least twice a year. So over decades, the topsoil has washed away into the Mississippi and down into the Gulf of America. So those are just three items, just to demonstrate that big agro and traditional agriculture, it doesn't really have it, and it's really not working. So going back to permaculture is really interested in designing natural landscapes that provide food, where there's food production and where there's a perennial system that is working. And it uses a variety of gardening techniques, from biodynamic agriculture to horticulture and to other different techniques. And it's interesting to consider system design, which permaculture is part of a whole system design. And what does that mean? Well, that means that to be successful in a design and in an ecosystem, you have to consider all the parts, all the variables, all the different elements that go into constructing a whole system. In our society, especially after the 17th century, and materialism has actually been in favor of discreteness, separating everything. And an example of that is the human body. We're composed of a head, limbs, foot, arm, different parts of the body, the organs. So when you go to a doctor, for example, and the doctor's a specialist, then your stomach ulcers. So the stomach ulcers could be a consequence of a nervous situation. There'd be a consequence of diet. Does the doctor that is a specialist in ulcers know about diet? I doubt so, especially the traditional doctors. So medicine is a good example of something that is not whole system driven. They are into parts, discrete parts, and a specialist in these discrete parts. Permaculture and whole system designs includes all the parts together into one big system. So I'd like to talk about the ethics too in permaculture. It's just really important in permaculture. We want to have care for the earth and care for the people. Care for the earth includes all living things. Includes the plants, includes the protozoa, bacteria, includes the weather.
What's protozoa? You want to explain that?
Protozoas are unicellular organisms and found in good soil.
Animals, fish, all of it.
All of it, yeah, all of it, so that's earth care, right? And then one aspect which is really interesting, and I think still needs a lot of dilucidation and some people to write about, maybe I will, is the people care part. And here there is quite a bit of difficulty. Toby Hemingway says that Bill Mollison says that we should take care of ourselves, of our food and shelter. And then when that's taken care of, we should all come together in cooperation and help others. The West is not in sync with that at all. We only want to take care of ourselves, and it's a society based on competition rather than cooperation. I think this project, and Corey will second me, is about voluntaryism. Did I say that right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's been several people that have coined different terms, like collaborationism was one I heard too. But the idea is to cooperate and get out of those private zones that the West has sold us as shields. You know, they're kind of like shields where, you know, this is my space. And, you know, once I've taken care of my bills and all that, you know, I don't want to go beyond that space because there's nothing in it for me, if you will. So permaculture is somewhat at odds with capitalism from that standpoint, from Bill Mollison's standpoint in particular. I think that should be revised, and permaculture should not be at odds with capitalism. Mm-hmm. And when I say capitalism, I mean, you know, micro entrepreneurs, small businesses, family business, not crony capitalism. And I think there's a renaissance right around the corner, and these new hubs of businesses that will emerge. And that's where permaculture can fit quite nicely, I think. And we shouldn't be at odds in considering, well, what kind of revenues, what kinds of streams, income streams can we bring to this project?
Ken mentions a lot of alternative currencies too. So
exactly. That brings right into it too. So I'd like to just end with Bill Mollison, Toby Hemingway's one of his definitions. It says, permaculture uses a set of principles and practices to design sustainable human settlements.
Very nice.
True sustainability as opposed to what the United Nations want to push on us.
Good caveat. And that's why I say they have to be revised. Some of these philosophies or concepts that our forefathers of permaculture put together, and we appreciate it. And I mean, I revere all of these people and what they've done, especially on the technical part. But in society, especially here in the U.S., I mean, we have to kind of broaden things and include, you know, the mercantile aspect of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For sure. All right. Well, I love that introduction to permaculture, and I'm glad we also can get our hands dirty and get more practical demonstrations as well.
I cooperated and volunteered for this project.
Thank you, Carlos. You're awesome. And by the way, for everybody watching, we did a presentation with you. It now has over 1,000 views across all platforms.
Really?
People really appreciate your presentation that you did before you know, going now where we're really putting this into practice, and now we're doing a lot more, you know, trying to get it all going, and we're doing maybe parts at a time, right? But you gave us a really good outline in that presentation, so thank you for doing that.
If we can do this triangle and mark it, then I'll leave it up to Corey to figure out the math of these other ones. But that would be my objective. Quickly with the design again, it has all suggestions for plants and trees, annuals, perennials, tree gills and understories. You can go to the video and there's detailed sections about that. There's an area we identified as the annual garden, which we hope to be a huge raised annual bed in the form of a keyhole garden. And we're actually looking for volunteers to build this once the design is finalized. But it also includes a little cottage in the very back. I don't know if you've walked back there for Airbnb and maybe workshops. And a guest area too.
Yep.
It's back here. Well, one thing I do want to point out is that we do have our friend the Coatee River. It's a lovely, lovely river, but it does flood once every 100 years, according to FEMA. And that flood happened last year.
Yes.
So,
but they just built that retaining pond, and of course they still plan on developing this entire area around us.
So we are betting on another 100 years of dryness. But some of these trees were planted over here by the river because they're wet feet trees and they'll tolerate some water. And then over here, there's this little rectangle here, which is also going to kind of absorb any flooding into our food area, food forest area.
And privacy too for the neighbor.
Exactly, yeah. Because that's another thing in permaculture, we want to layer the functions of everything we do. So this is privacy, it also retains the water, and it'll give us food. So there's 3 functions there. But I wanted to mention this because I think it's a pretty neat little solution is, see this corner right here of the, it's right here, right? Right over here.
Yep, it is.
This is the corner where I am also guessing, but my best educated guess is the water when it floods and it's rushing north to south, coming this way really fast. It finds this corner, right? What do you think is going to happen in the elbow?
Yeah, elbow lake.
Right, the elbow will, back up and the water is going to come this way. And Brian confirmed that the water was right here. So my solution is to use this elbow shape and do a rows of bushes and berries. And the roots of that will contain the flood if there is one.
Awesome. Thank you so much for demonstrating that. And so we can start marking some of this. Go ahead again.
Would it make sense to start with an inflatable tent here? You can get these nice inflatables.
Yeah, anything that's portable is, and I've suggested to Corey that this annual garden right here, we're already running late and might just have to be a project for next year. But in the meantime, you could buy one of those portable, smaller, galvanized annual beds so that you already have experience and you can get some annuals in already. A progression in permaculture, your observation, vision, development, and then design, development, and then implementation. The implementation of this is the design. The implementation of this precedes the planting. So you'd have to get on with this, at least the inner circle, if you want to be ready for September. Otherwise, my suggestion is let's do a temporal or not permanent solution, and next year you'd have a little more time to get the people, get the design, because this has to be designed, the walls have to be specific.
Okay.
So anyway, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Carlos. And I want people to check out your book again. Could you give us a little description about what this book is about? Do you mind?
Well, this book is in search of singularity, and it's just reflections from the end of times. It's a collection of essays of my time in Brooklyn. I lived in Brooklyn for about 10 years. So each chapter is a different reflection, and I talk about different things. I do talk about permaculture, but it's mostly a social critique mixed in with some fantasy and some science fiction.
Ooh, very
But
cool.
it reads really nicely, and there are some optimistic. It has an optimistic focus.
Okay.
You can find it online in Amazon, and you can also find me on X at Cuellar Brown, Cuellar Brown.
Okay. I'll have it in the description for people as well.